students, welcome to iProLedge. Hope you all are doing well. My name is Teja. I'm your JIGL faculty. In our previous video, we have covered what is Article 12. So now you all know what is Article 12. It has defined what is state, right? In this video, we will cover the following articles. We will understand what is Article 13, what is Article 14, what is Article 15 and what is Article 16. Alright. So these are the articles that we will be covering in this particular video. So let's start. Alright. What is Article 13? Article 13 says that those laws that are inconsistent with the fundamental right will be invalid. What does it say? Those laws that are inconsistent with the fundamental right will be invalid. Now, what are the fundamental rights? We know that there are 6 fundamental rights. Yes. So, these are the 6 fundamental rights. Right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom and religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. Article 13 says, any law that is inconsistent with these fundamental rights will be invalid. Okay? Let us understand. Correct. So, Article 13 gives real force to fundamental rights by declaring that any law that is violating them is what? Fundamental rights is invalid. So, laws inconsistent with fundamental rights are invalid. Now, here they have differentiated, they have categorized Article 13 in 2 ways. Article 13. Pre-constitutional laws and post-constitutional laws. Okay. So here they have differentiated as pre-constitutional laws and post-constitutional laws. Pre-constitutional laws are existing laws. Post-constitutional laws are future laws. Article 13 says what? Any law that is inconsistent with fundamental rights are invalid. So before constitution, all of those laws that are there, if any of that law is inconsistent with the fundamental right, then we will make that law invalid. It does not have any existence. Similarly, post-constitutional laws, that means after constitution, state cannot make any law that is inconsistent with the fundamental right. Understanding all of you? Article 13 simply says any law that is inconsistent with fundamental right, we will not give any validity to that law. Now, those laws, now before constitution, they were laws, right? So, that it could happen that those laws would be inconsistent with fundamental right because fundamental right came later, after constitution, right? So, those laws that are inconsistent with the fundamental rights, we will make that law as invalid and remaining part will be valid. To the extent it is invalid, we will cancel it out. We will make it invalid. Okay? And similarly, now when state is making law, can it make law that is inconsistent with fundamental right? Article 13 says no. Understanding that if bifurcation what Article 13 has done, pre-constitutional laws and post-constitutional laws. Clear? Yes. Now, here what are we seeing? Here we are seeing laws that are inconsistent with fundamental right. For this we need to understand what is law as per Article 13. Now, Article 13 has defined what is law. Let us understand what is law as per Article 13. Law under Article 13 is very wide and it includes, inclusive definition. It includes what? Acts, ordinances, rules, regulations, notifications, customs and etc. This is the definition of law as per Article 13. Now, can notification be inconsistent with fundamental right? No, because as per Article 13, law notification is covered in the definition of law. Now, can any rules be made that is inconsistent with fundamental right? No, because as per Article 13, rules are covered under the definition of law. Understanding all of you? Now, a very big question was raised. Is constitutional amendment a law? The question that was raised was, is constitutional amendment a law? Can Parliament amend the constitution. If it is if at all constitutional amendment is a law as per Article 13, then Parliament does not have the authority to amend the fundamental rights, correct? Because as per Article 13, any law that is inconsistent with fundamental right is invalid. So this was the question raised. And now the present situation, as per 24th constitutional amendment, it is said that constitutional amendment is not a law. Article 13 will not be applicable on constitutional amendment. Article 13 is applicable on laws, but in the definition of law, we have not covered constitutional amendment. So Parliament can make law. Parliament can amend the constitution, but without affecting the basic structure of the constitution. We have seen this in Keshwananda Bharati case. What is the Keshwananda Bharati case is the most important case. It says in this case that the question before the court was, can Parliament amend the constitution? In Keshwananda Bharati case, it was held that yes, Parliament can amend the constitution, but Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of the constitution. Okay, clear all of you? So what is the present situation? Is Article 13 applicable on constitutional amendment? No. 24th Constitutional Amendment 1971, which clarified that Article 13 does not apply to constitutional amendment made under Article 368. Clear all of you? And another very important point that you have to remember is Keshwananda Bharati case. In this case, the court held that Parliament can amend the constitution, but basic structure of the constitution cannot be amended. So the question to you is, can basic structure of constitution be amended? Can it be amended? No. Basic structure of the constitution cannot be amended. This was held in which case? In Keshwananda Bharati case. Keshwananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. Clear all of you? Yes, all of you understood what is Article 13? Now we will understand certain doctrines pertaining to Article 13. The very first doctrine is doctrine of severability. Doctrine of severability. Severability means what? Separability. You can separate it. So it is said that in a law, in an act, there would be some part that is inconsistent with fundamental right, but rest all part is valid. Rest all part is within the ambit of fundamental right. So should we strike out the entire act? No. We will apply doctrine of severability and say we will separate the inconsistent part and make that inconsistent part only invalid. We will keep the consistent part valid itself. All of you clear? What is doctrine of severability? A very important doctrine. It says those laws that are inconsistent with fundamental right, that part we will separate and we will make this part only invalid. Okay? But this we can do only if the separated part can act on its own. So this is the consistent part and this is inconsistent part. But this both need each other to act. It cannot act separately. At that time we cannot separate it. Only when individually these two can act. At that time the inconsistent part we will separate and make the consistent part valid. This is doctrine of severability. We will sever, we will separate the consistent and inconsistent part. All of you clear what is doctrine of severability? Yes. Next. The next doctrine is doctrine of eclipse. What is doctrine of eclipse? Doctrine of eclipse means, now what do you mean by eclipse? Your solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, what happens there? There is a shadow, right? So there's a planet here and another body comes here and shadows this. The same thing we are doing. Now doctrine of eclipse is applicable only to pre-constitutional laws. Okay? This is applicable only to pre-constitutional laws. What doctrine of eclipse says? Doctrine of eclipse says that now there is consistent part, there is inconsistent part. We will shadow the inconsistent part. It would become inoperative, but we will not remove it from the act. We will only shadow it. We will cover it. Okay, this is also called as, doctrine of eclipse is also called as rule of shadow. It is also called as rule of shadow. What is rule of shadow? We will separate, okay, this is the inconsistent part, this is the consistent part. We will make the inconsistent part inoperative, and later, if it is within the ambit of constitution, if it is within the ambit of fundamental right after amendment, we will remove the shadow and make it operative. All of you understanding? See, this is applicable only to pre-constitutional laws. Now, pre-constitutional laws, already there are laws. In this law, there are some parts that are inconsistent with the fundamental right. Okay. This part, what we will do? We will not remove it. We will shadow it. We will make it inoperative until the time it is inconsistent with fundamental right. Later, tomorrow, it can happen that this particular part, what we have made it inoperative because it is inconsistent with fundamental right. Later, it can happen that by amendment, they have made this valid. This part was invalid before, but now through amendment, they have made this part valid. At that time, we will remove the shadow and make this part operative. Clear? We are not removing here, we are only shadowing it. We are covering it. We are making it inoperative for time being. And later, when it becomes consistent with fundamental right, we will make it operative. Clear all of you? This is doctrine of eclipse. Very important two doctrines, doctrine of severability and doctrine of eclipse. Let us understand another doctrine, doctrine of waiver of fundamental right. What is doctrine of waiver of fundamental right? My question to you all, can you waive your fundamental right? No. You cannot waive your fundamental right. What it says? Waiver means voluntarily giving up a right. Can you voluntarily give up your fundamental right? No. That leverage you don't have. So waiver means voluntarily giving up a right. In India, fundamental right cannot be waived by a citizen. The Supreme Court has held that no person can waive fundamental right because they are not meant only for individuals but also for public interest. Now, Constitution has fundamental right not just to protect individuals but to protect the public interest. That is why you don't have the leverage to waive the fundamental right. Clear all of you? Understanding the three most important doctrines. The very first doctrine is doctrine of severability, where we separate the consistent and inconsistent part and we will make the consistent part valid and inconsistent part invalid. Clear? What is doctrine of eclipse? This is applicable only to pre-constitutional laws. Those laws, that part of the law which is inconsistent with fundamental right, we will cover it, we will shadow it, we will make it inoperative for that time being. We will not remove it. Later, if it becomes consistent because of some amendment in fundamental right, at that time we will make it operative. Clear? This is doctrine of eclipse. Now, can we waive the fundamental right? No. That is doctrine of waiver. All of you clear with Article 13? This is your Article 13. Here the most important thing what you have to remember, two things is, first thing is constitutional amendment. Is Article 13 applicable to constitutional amendment? No. Article 13 is not applicable to constitutional amendment. Can Parliament amend the Constitution? Yes, Parliament can amend the Constitution. My next question, can Parliament amend basic structure of the Constitution? No. Parliament cannot amend basic structure of the Constitution. Parliament cannot touch basic structure of the Constitution. That authority Parliament does not have. Okay? Clear all of you? This is Article 13. Let us go to the next article. Next article is Article 14. A very important article, your fundamental right. Article 14. What does it say? Article 14 to Article 18 talks about right to equality. Okay. Article 14 to 18 deals with right to equality. Article 14 lays down the general principles of equality. Article 15 and 16 deals with specific applications relating to public employment. Article 17 and 18 deals with special forms of equality, abolition of untouchability and titles. In this video, we will be covering what is Article 14, 15 and 16. Clear? Yes. What is Article 14? Article 14 says, the state shall not deny to any person two things: equality before law or equal protection of law. State cannot deny, state cannot say no for two things: equality before law and equal protection of law. It has two important parts here. First, equality before law means what? It means no special privilege to anyone. We will treat as per law, we will treat everyone equally. Everyone is subject to the same law and court regardless of status. Now tomorrow, a very rich person, a very wealthy politician is there before the court. Just because he is a very famous person, will court treat him differently from others? No. Everyone is equal before law. Okay? Yes. Next, what is equal protection of law? It says, this is very important, understand. It says, like persons should be treated alike. The state must not show favoritism or discrimination. Like should be treated alike. Let us understand this. Now, I'll give an example. There is a college and this college is taking admissions. Okay. Now, this college is taking admissions. It is telling we will charge 1 lakh rupees fees for every single person who comes. Whether he is a poor person or whatever his status is, we are charging 1 lakh rupees. This is what? Equality. I am treating every single person equal. Okay, whatever your status is. This is the first example. Okay, now understand the second one. The college says people who fall under this category of income, a bit of poor income category, they will be treated, for them we will be charging fees of 60,000. But for remaining, we will be charging fees of 1 lakh. This is what has happened here. Is there equality here? No. We are treating one category of people who require that benefit separately. We are giving that benefit for the people who require that benefit. This is the principle of equity. This is law of equity, not equality. Not everyone is equal before law is different. That is different. That is equality. But here in my example, what has happened? It is equity that they are following. Who require that benefit, give them that benefit. Because if you treat equal and unequal the same, there would be imbalance. Now law says that every single person has to pay 30% tax. This is what? Equality. If you are earning 1 crore, also pay 30%. If you are earning 10,000, also pay 30%. Is there any balance there? It would create imbalance in the economy. Correct? No? So law doesn't say that. Law has kept tax slabs. So if you are in this category, you pay less tax. Don't pay tax if you fall under this category. If you come in higher tax bracket, then pay higher tax. This, what has law done here? Equity. Those who require the benefit, give them the benefit. This is what it says. Like should be treated alike. We cannot treat like and unlike in the same footing. That would create imbalance in the economy. Understood all of you what is equality and what is equity? Yes, let us understand. Equality does not mean identical treatment. All people are not equal in all respects. Of course, rich is separate, poor is separate. They are not equal. They are separate in their own ways. So treating unequals equally It may cause inequality. Very important. What are they telling here? There are two people who are unequal. They are telling rich and poor. They are unequal, no? When it comes to earning, you are treating them same. This is inequality. This is not equality. Understood, all of you? Poor and poor. You are treating them same. This is equality. Like and like, treated same, equality. Like, that is poor, and rich, unlike. Like and unlike, you are treating same. This is inequality. Understood? So therefore, equals. If at all both are poor, treat them same. Same treatment. This is equality. If they are unequal, treat them differently. This is inequality. When you treat them differently, then it is equality. Else it becomes inequality. Clear, all of you? So law is based on the principle of equity. Okay? Yes. So Article 14 talks about legislative classification. That means what? So right now, what are we discussing? We are discussing that we are classifying the needy people and the person who is well off. That means we are making classification. How should this classification be? It should be reasonable. It should be rational. It should not be arbitrary. Arbitrary means just you want classification, you make. No. It has to be reasonable classification. You need to have, it should be fair. It should be correct. You need to have valid reasons why I have made this classification. That is the first point. So classification should always be on what grounds? It should be based on reasonable grounds. Clear, all of you? Second, there is a rational nexus between classification and object of law. Very important. While your classification, the differences what you are making, it should have direct connection with the object of law. Object of law says like should be treated alike. Correct? So object of the law says that we have to treat this particular category, we have to give benefit to this particular category. So when you are making that differentiation, when you are making that classification should have direct nexus with the object of the law. That means it should have direct connection with the object of the law. Object of the law says that we have to give benefit for the people who require. Your classification should be based on that. Your classification should say that yes, it is giving benefit for the people who require. Only then that classification is valid. Else that classification is invalid. What are the two grounds on which we will make the classification? First, it should be based on reasonable grounds. It should be fair. It should be correct. It should not be arbitrary. What is the second ground? There is a rational nexus that between the classification and the object. That means it has to have connection. The classification and the object of the law should have the connection. These are the two important points that you have to remember in Article 14. Clear, all of you? So when do you say classification is valid? Classification is valid if it is legal, reasonable, and based on relevant differences. Yes. There are two tests of classification. They have given test of classification. So whenever you are making the classification, you have to go through this test. If you are going through this test, then your classification is valid. Else your classification is invalid. What is the test? First, classification is allowed under Article 14. Article 14 does not prohibit classification. Article 14 does not say don't make classification. But any classification what you make must be reasonable and valid. This is what Article 14 says. Now what is the two test of valid classification? First, intelligible differentia. Okay. So whatever classification you are making, there must be a clear and understandable basis for grouping. You need to have valid reasons. You have to intelligently differentiate it. You have to have a fair differentiation, not arbitrary. This is the first test. It has to be reasonable, intelligible differentia. The group must be distinct from those left out. I will give an example. In a class, there is the same example. In a class, there is one category of people who cannot afford so much of money. In the same class, there is other class of people who are wealthy and who can afford. So we will classify these two. Or else another example, in a class there is very smart students who are always scoring well. in the same class there are students who does not score well, so we will differentiate the people who have scored well and the people who have not scored well. This is intelligible differentia, this is not arbitrary, correct? Yes. What is the second point? Rational nexus. So the basis of classification must have direct connection with the object of the law. We have seen this. So these are the two tests. If this test is qualified, if at all any law passes this test, then we say that classification is valid, it is as per Article 14, else we say that classification is invalid. Clear all of you? Understood? Very important Article 14, a very important law, a very important article. So this is the scope of Article 14 where the same things are there. Article 14 forbids class legislation, not classification. It says yes, classification should be there. Unfair discrimination is prohibited, but reasonable grouping of the people is allowed. Two conditions for permissible classification. Classification must be based on clear difference and must relate to the object of the law. Please remember all of these points, a very important point for your exam. What is the scope of Article 14? Basis of classification. Classification must be based on grounds like geography, occupation, object. Yes, based on the locality you are there, segregate the people of this particular locality. Based on the occupation that you are in, segregate the people based on the occupation. Perfect equality not required. Yes, you don't have to say everyone is equal and give same opportunity for rich and poor. No, needy people require more benefits, give them that benefits. And then single person classification is allowed. Even one person can be treated as separate class if special circumstances justify. And then Article 14 applies to law and procedures. Discrimination is prohibited not only in substantive law but also in legal procedure. So no discrimination anywhere. And then every law is presumed valid and the burden is on the challenger to prove the violation of Article 14. This is the scope of Article 14. So this is all about Article 14, a very important article. So yes, let us continue. Next article is Article 15. What is Article 15? It is prohibition on discrimination. It is prohibition of discrimination. We cannot differentiate. Law cannot discriminate. State cannot discriminate any citizen. Only on these grounds. On the basis of religion you are differentiating. No. On the basis of race. No. Basis of caste. Basis of sex. On the basis of place of birth you are discriminating. Is that allowed? No. State cannot discriminate. Discrimination on any one or combination of these grounds is prohibited. Nobody can be discriminated on these 5 grounds. What are those 5 grounds? You have to remember. First, religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. Clear all of you? Yes. So this is Article 15.1. What is Article 15.2? Equal access to public places. Can you differentiate someone using a well or pond, telling that no, you belong to this caste, don't use this well? All of that is not allowed. It is prohibited. No citizen can be denied access to shops, hotels, restaurant, place of public entertainment, well, tank, roads, bathing ghats and public places just on the mere basis of caste, religion, custom. Can you differentiate them? No, you cannot differentiate them. So this applies to places maintained by state or meant for public use, not private use. A private individual can restrict someone else from entering his premises. That is different. We are talking about public places. Okay? Yes. So the discrimination is not allowed. Everyone should be allowed to get access to public places. Alright? Next, Article 15.3. Special provision for women and children. We can give some special benefits for women and children. Okay? So the state can make special laws in favor of women and children. Such favorable treatment is not discrimination. Reservation for women, maternity benefit that is only for women, free education for girls, all of this is not discrimination. This is valid. Okay, because they require that benefit and we are giving them that benefit. Okay. Next, Article 15.4. Reservation for backward classes, SC, ST class, for them you can give reservation. Again, they require that benefit and they are getting that benefit. Next, Article 15(5), reservation in educational institution. So this is inserted by 93rd Constitutional Amendment. It says allows reservation for SC, ST, SCBCs in government college, aided and unaided private colleges. For them, reservations is valid because they require that benefit. But there is an exception. What is this exception? Minority educational institution. Understand this, very important point. Now, who is minority? They have formed an educational institution. That is, in an economy, there is majority and minority, right? The minority group has formed an educational institution. And in this educational institution, formed by minority group only, you are telling, as per Article 15(5), give other categories reservation. Doesn't make sense, right? They are already minority group and you are imposing a restriction telling that even in this minority education institution there has to be reservation. So law says there is an exception. We will not apply Article 15 for minority educational institution. Clear all of you? Yes. And then 15(6), reservation, this is important, reservation for economically weaker section. So this is inserted recently by 103rd Constitutional Amendment. This is not talking about caste. This is talking about people based on their income, economically weaker section, okay, not basis on caste. So it allows special provisions for economically weaker section other than SC, ST and OBC. Other than the caste basis, we have categorized, if you fall in this category, you are economically weaker section. For that category, benefit can be given, okay, they can be given some benefit, they can be given some kind of reservation. So reservation can be given in educational institution up to 10% of the total seats over and above the existing reservation. Up to 10% over and above the existing reservation. Reservation can be given to whom? For economically weaker section category. This is very important. Up to how much percent? Up to 10% over and above the existing reservations. Clear all of you? So how do you determine economically weaker section? Meaning of economically weaker section, it is determined by state based on family income and other indicators of economic disadvantage. Okay, this is not on the basis of caste, this is on the basis of income. This is all about Article 15. Okay, Article 15(1) says what? No discrimination on these 5 grounds. 15(2) says equal opportunity to everyone to access public places. 15(3) says we can give some special benefits to women and children. 15(4) says reservation for SC, ST, SCBC on the basis of caste-wise discrimination. And then 15(5) says reservation in education institution. But if it is a minority education institution, 15(5) is not applicable on that. 15(6) says reservation for economically weaker section. This is categorized based on income and up to what percentage? Up to 10% over and above the existing reservation. Clear all of you? This is Article 15. Now we will do Article 16. What is Article 16? It is equality of opportunity in public employment. Okay, it says 16(1) says every citizen must get fair and equal chance in government jobs. Yes, this is not applicable to private jobs. This is only applicable to government jobs. What it says? It says that every citizen must be given equal opportunity to get government job. There you cannot make differentiation. Okay? Okay. So no discrimination. Government cannot discriminate in jobs on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth or residence. Article 16(3), Parliament may require residence in a state or union territory as qualification for certain government job. Normally government jobs are open for all Indians, but Parliament can make a law saying only people who live in this state or union territory can apply for this particular job. What does it say? What is the general rule? No discrimination to get government job. Okay, but parliament, not state legislature, parliament can differentiate. Parliament can say that people of this particular union territory, people of this particular state would be qualified to get this government job. That parliament can do, and not the state legislature. Remember, okay, important. Only parliament can do this. Article 16(4), reservation for backward classes. Government may reserve posts for backward classes that are not adequately represented in public services. So basically, government can give some reservation for the backward classes. This is very important. Recently, it is inserted. Article 16(4)(a) and Article 16(4)(b). Understand this. What does it say? Promotion and backlog vacancies. Reservation can be given to SC and ST in promotion with seniority. Now, there is a non-reserved category and there is reserved category. The reserved category gets promoted based on reservation, and that reserved category would be senior compared to the non-reserved category based on reservation. This is what they have inserted in Article 16(4)(b), recently inserted. Reservation is applicable to promotions with seniority. Yes. Next, 16(4)(b). What does it say? Unfilled reserved vacancies of earlier years can now be carried forward without breaking 50% limit of the current year. Very, very important. What does it say? It says that earlier, for reserved category, they have reserved 10 seats, but only 5 seats got filled, and remaining 5, it was there. Now what you can do, you can carry forward to current year. Okay, and whatever that 50% limit is there, you don't have to touch that. Above that 50% also, even if the reservation go, because of the carry forward package, then it is fine. Understanding all of you? They have kept the 50% limit of reservation, and the earlier reservation which was not filled, only that reservation, that you can carry forward to the current year. And when you carry forward, if it exceeds 50% also, it is fine. Okay, so what are they telling? Unfilled reserved vacancies of the earlier year can be carried forward to the current year without breaking the 50% limit of the current year. Understanding all of you? That will not get touched. That 50% we will keep it separate. This you can carry forward to the next year. Okay? Yes. Next is 16(5) and 16(6), special cases. 16(5), religious institution may require employees to belong to that particular religion only. Yes. Now, if it is a temple, they can put a restriction that in this temple, a priest can be of Hindu only. Only this particular religion can become a priest in this particular temple. Okay, so this restriction they can put. And then 16(6), reservation up to 10% for economic weaker section in government jobs. How we have seen reservation in Article 15, even in Article 16 they are telling in government jobs for economic weaker section we will give them reservation up to 10%. Clear all of you? This is about Article 16. So in our video we have covered Article 13, 14, 15 and 16. In our next video, we will cover the remaining articles. Yes. See you soon. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe to iProLeg. Thank you all.